Hi guys, it's Lynn here. I hope you're having an amazing day. Now in this video guys, I'm going to be telling you how you can get rid of the dreaded root mealybug. Now I've made quite a lot of videos on how to get rid of mealybug, which is the more commonly seen one, which grows on the leaves and the foliage of cacti and succulents especially. And a few different methods of how I deal with that. So I'm going to be linking some of them videos onto this one as well. But this particular video, I'm going to be talking about root mealybug. Now, root mealybug is different to the traditional type of mealybug you see on the stems and in between the spines of cacti and succulents, because the normal type of mealybug that you get that eats on the foliage, it's often more visible to see. You often see little cotton wool deposits all over it. And how I treat mealybug, it's one of them things that it is very difficult to get rid of, especially with the root mealybug, which I'm going to talk about now. I'm just talking about a little bit more about the commonly seen of the top foliage type of mealybug. I usually treat it with a combination of neem oil and also SB Invigorator and also rubbing isopropyl alcohol as well. But I've made many videos on how I treat my cacti and succulents with mealybug, so do check them videos out. The links will be up above on this video and also down below in the about section, and also at the end annotations there'll be different links to mealybug videos, so do click onto them videos if you want to know how I deal with mealybug on my cacti and succulent plants. This video is just about root mealybug. Now, I've been asked many times about root mealybug and how do I deal with it. Well, up until now, I've not been able to make a video because, thankfully, it's a pest that I haven't had for a long time, commonly with the foliage mealybug, but not root mealybug. Now at this moment in time, I've been going through a lot of my plants, doing a bit of repotting now because it's sort of late summer and I want to get them all repotted before winter kicks in. And the first one I found here, I've had root mealybug. Now I've had root mealybug in the past many times. I've been growing cacti and succulents now for a very long time. About 30, well over 30 years, in fact 35 years, since my very early teens. So this is a pest I've encountered many times, and I'm going to be telling you how I deal with it, and this is a perfect example now to make this video with this. Now, this obviously the way you know you have root mealybug is you often get it out the pot. Usually you don't know until you're either repotting a plant or the plant looks sickly. Now this plant's actually very healthy. In fact, I never knew there was anything wrong with the roots until I went to repot it. It's a happy plant and it just needed to be repotted. And when I got it out, I always check, when I repot plants, I always check over the root system to check there's no signs of hidden pests and things like that. And I mention that in every video, repotting video I do. And in this case, I actually did start off filming a video, the normal way of a repotting. And I said, now guys, always best to check them. And oh, yes, this one's got root mealybug. So I want to show you, if you're not familiar with root mealybug, what it looks like. Now, this particular plant, thankfully, isn't heavily infested with root mealybug. You can see that there's a white deposit at the bottom there. Sometimes when you scrape it, in between, it will give off a juice. It'll either be pinky or greenish. Usually root mealybug, it will be more like a greeny type of colouring when you squeeze them. But again, there's many different varieties, as there is the foliage mealybug. But also you notice as well around the pot, you'll see a little bit of white around the pot. Now, this, unfortunately, it is one of the worst pests, because if it's really heavily infected on your roots, then there is two ways of actually dealing with root mealybug. And the two ways I would deal with it, and the two ways I have dealt with it in the past, is if this was completely covered in a bad way, in other words, the roots were very badly covered with root mealybug, rather than actually just try and treat it, I would actually completely cut off the roots. And this will be for cacti and succulents, regardless of what type of cactus or succulent it is. I'll completely cut the roots off, let the cactus or succulent callus over for a few days to a number of weeks, depending on how long it takes to form a thick callus, and then I'll completely treat and pot it up in fresh soil and treat it as a cutting. But This isn't that bad. This can be treated like this because it's not heavily infected. But what I do need to do is completely remove the soil. Now, if you're the type of person who don't want to completely cut off all the roots and that's too risky with my plant, then this is what I'm going to be showing you what you can do in this video. But as I say, it's always best if it's heavily infected to just treat it as a whole cutting. And if you want to see a very good video of how cacti and succulents magically recover when you actually treat them completely as a cutting when they have a bad case of root mealybug, then do check out my friend Daz's video, and he's got a great YouTube channel called Cactus Mania, and I'll put the link up above now to his video and also his channel where he shows the transformation after he had to dramatically cut the roots off because they were heavily infected with root mealies, and how they grow new roots. So, you know, these plants are amazing how they do recover. Now, because this, as you can see, there's little tiny, you can see it's very difficult sometimes to get the macro, but there is little tiny white deposits there. I can clearly see that that is root mealybug. Thankfully, it's not very bad, so this can be treated without having to cut the roots off. But what you need to do, the first thing you do, whether you're cutting the roots off or whether you're leaving the roots on, is you thoroughly, first of all, you isolate the plant from your other ones. So this one is going to be isolated. I've took it out from my collection, obviously I'm repotting it, but it is good to isolate. And also check the other plants around the area. Where this plant was, I've got a few other succulents in the same place, so I'm going to be going through all of them and thoroughly checking the root systems out too. This is really important because root mealybug can crawl out and go into these little holes here and into your other plants and suck on the roots. So you have to check the surrounding plants. If you've got it on one plant on the roots, the chances are you got it around some of the plants close to it too. So just bear that in mind. And in the meantime, quarantine this one away from all your other ones. And then you need to make sure that you thoroughly clean and sterilize the old pot. This case I'm going to be using it in very hot water, soapy water, so completely sterilised. There's no traces. As you can see, there's a tiny little bit there, little tiny bit of white under there. Squeeze that, you see. You want to make sure this is completely clean. And obviously afterwards I'm going to completely sterilise this tray as well. Really important because even the tiniest bit of root mealy and it can spread. And what you want to do then is you have to remove, if you're keeping the roots on, and the reason why I'm in this case because it's really not that bad, as you can see, you need to completely remove all of this soil off the roots. And that's why if it's heavily infested, it's too much hassle, you just take a cutting. And I probably would be honest with you, if I wasn't making this video, I would just cut it and treat this as a cutting. But I want to show you what to do if you want to keep the roots on, because that's the most difficult part here. So then you have to thoroughly remove all this soil, which I'm going to be doing now, and then I'm going to be remove as much of the soil as I can. Once I have, I'm then going to be submerging the whole roots into this warm water. Now this is very warm water, but it's not boiling hot water or even very hot water. It's very warm water, and at the moment it's about 115 degrees Fahrenheit, which is probably about 46 degrees Celsius. And that's because the warm water will kill any remaining mealybugs left on the roots, and that's what you want to do. This is important because if I just remove all the soil off and then pot it up into fresh soil again, the chances are microscopic particles of mealybug, especially the nest, will still be on there. And then a few months down the line, you're back to square one with the infestation. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be removing the soil from the roots and showing you how I'm going to be doing it. Now what you want to be doing is obviously gently teasing off all of the soil from the roots. As I say, this soil is quite loose, so it's easy for me to very gently, easy to weigh. And obviously once I've soaked this in the warm water, I'm going to be letting the roots dry up over the next few days. I'm not just going to put this straight into fresh soil, because the roots obviously are coming away. It's impossible to remove all the soil off without damaging the roots here. As you can see, some of the roots are going to come back, but it's just removing as much of the soil as you can, and then once I submerge it in the water, which I'm going to show you in a minute, leaving the roots then to dry up before putting in the fresh soil. As you can see there, that some of the root mealybugs, they're difficult to get a close up with the macro, but if I was to squeeze it, you can see how they just go. Oh, so obviously all this soil I'm going to be obviously disposing of, and don't put the soil that you're removing from the plants into a compost bin or anything like that, because as I say, root mealybug can spread, especially in a compost bin. You just want to completely dispose of this soil. In this case, it's going in the garbage bin. So bear that in mind, because these horrible bugs, you can see they're there, they're just spread like wildfire. Now, that's as much of the soil as I can get off without coming to any damage to the roots. As you can see, most of it's off the big roots, but there's still obviously, that's where a lot of the root mealybugs will still be hiding here at the base. So obviously, if I was to just pot that now up in fresh soil, it might help the plant short term, but long term, unfortunately, it's going to come back. Now, I've got the water here. As I say, you want to use hot water, but not boiling water or very hot. I wouldn't go over 120 degree Fahrenheit. This is around 115 degree Fahrenheit, about 46 Celsius. And if you've got a little water temperature gauge, that will tell you the correct temperature. But as long as I always think with this case, if it's, you can put your hand in it and it's just warm as if you're having a nice warmish bath. That's the best type of temperature, not boiling obviously, because then you'll end up killing the roots, but probably the plant too, but enough so it's warm as if you're having a bath. And then I'm going to have to probably soak this a few times here. This will help to loosen up any more of the soil as well, and the warm water will help kill any bugs. Sometimes in this case you'll see some of the root mealies will float up to the surface if there's any still left. There's a little baby there, so I'll probably separate that into its own little pot. And as you can see, there's some probably coming up the top. And I'm just going to soak this for a little bit, loosen up the roots. I'm going to be soaking this and I'm going to empty this water out, and then going to be doing the same thing again. So it's completely free of all the soil. I just want to show you this. I've been loosening the soil off the past 5 minutes here, and you can see the root mealies at the top of the water. They'll float up to the top, as you can see there. That's how you know that they're hiding right in that soil. So this is essentially, you remove every scrap bit of soil before you repot again. Now, so more of the little root mealies floating at the top there. So I'm going to be emptying this water out again. I'm going to be doing the same thing again with warm water, again to flush out more soil and more bugs. Now I've completely flushed off all the old soil on the first water there, and then this is a new bowl again. Again, warm, so it touches as if you're having a lovely warm bath. And I'm going to soak this a little bit more to loosen up the rest of the soil then, before letting the roots dry up. Now, I've swilled this is the third sort of soaking in the warm water, and I've thoroughly removed as much of the soil as I can, as you can see there. But there is still a little bit of soil left at the base, and I'm not taking any chances. Now, if you're able to remove practically all of the soil off, then you will be okay just to let this dry out, let the roots dry, not the roots dry out as such, just let the roots dry just for a few hours before putting into fresh soil. But because I can't really get right into this, and I don't want to cause any more damage to the roots, what I've done here, I'll just show you, I'm using a systemic here. Now this is specially for like root mealybugs and vine weevils and things like that. It's a systemic It is a systemic insecticide that you can water into the soil, and also it's one that does for root bugs. So I've just made a solution of it in here, and I'm going to soak this now just for 5 minutes, so this plant takes it into the roots. So if there's any bugs left, not only is it going to kill them directly, but the roots will take it up systemically. So if any of them hatch at a later date, any of the eggs, the bugs will feed onto the roots and they will die. Now, this is purely optional what I'm doing. I personally don't like to use insecticides. I was hoping I could remove all of the soil off. So just bear that in mind. If you can remove all the soil off, that should be sufficient enough before potting up in fresh soil. But if you can't, as in this case here, I really can't get into that without any more damaging the roots. That's why I'm soaking this in a systemic. I'm using something called Bug Clear. I'll just show you here. And it is a systemic one that is specially for soil pests. And I've made a solution to soak it in. But you could also use a solution of neem oil as well, because that also would kill pests. Personally, I'm not taking any chances. That's why I'm using this systemic. And then once this is, leaving this for 5 minutes, going to let this dry, and then going to pot it up then into fresh soil. Now that's the roots now after I've dipped them in the systemic insecticide. And now that it is still damp, the systemic insecticide will be working its way through. And I'm going to wait a few hours till these this has dried, the roots have dried, and then potting up then in fresh, dry soil. I'm going to be completely disposing of this soil here. Do not use that again, and do not put it in your compost bin, as I mentioned earlier. Completely throw this away in the garbage. And once this has dried, then I'm going to be potting it up. And then once I've potted it up, I will then leave it possibly for a few days and then re-water the plant again with a systemic insecticide. Either a systemic chemical insecticide like I've just used there, the bug clear, or I may use neem oil. And I have made a few videos on how to treat soil pests with neem oil. So I'll be doing that. And there shouldn't really be any remaining pests left on this. Any left should have been killed by the insecticide, but if there is, this is a bit of an extra measure by re-watering it again a week later, and hopefully that should be it. So leave this to dry and then be potting it up. Now this is completely dried. All the roots now have dried from the damp systemic insecticide that I had it soaking in. And it's ready now to plant up. Now I like to make my own cactus and succulent plant soil. And the reason why I prefer to do this is I like to know what goes into the soil. It's also far more economical as well to make your own, because commercial cactus and succulent soils can be pretty expensive. And I've already made a video on how to make cactus and succulent soil in 3 easy steps. So links up above to that video. But I like to use 3 equal parts of a loam-based soil, and grit, and also horticultural sand. And that's what I use. I give it all a good mix, and that's what I use with all my most of my cacti and succulents, other than the epiphyllums, the epiphytic ones. I will use more peat with them because they like to be kept a bit more damper than the desert cacti do. So now I've put a little bit of soil in the bottom there. I'm just going to be potting this up and showing you how I'm going to be doing it. Now this, by the way, the name of this plant is Kalanchoe bahariensis, and it's very similar to the Kalanchoe tomentosa. It has lovely furry leaves and very gorgeous, lovely blue coloration to it as well. Beautiful plant. And obviously just putting that in there. And completely fresh soil as well. Not only would give this plant a bit of a booster. Now what I'm going to be doing now is I'm not going to be watering this plant probably for about a week. And the reason being is obviously you've seen there, I've had to, some of the roots have got a little bit taken away when I had to remove as much of the soil as I could. So if I was to water this now, there is a possibility the plant could go rot because of the roots being damaged. But it's always best to repot a cactus during the spring, summer or fall, autumn, if you have the choice. Obviously, if you find out your cactus or succulent has root mealybugs in the middle of winter, you just have to do what you do. But if you're doing this in the winter time, I would leave the plant dry until the following spring, depending on what type of plant you're potting up. If it's one of the epiphytic types of cacti, or some of the autumn growing or the winter growing succulents, some of the South African ones, they can take a little bit of water. But it's always important that you allow the soil, in this case for about a week, just to let the roots acclimatise to the new soil. Now, as I say, leaving this a week now, and then I'm going to be watering it again. The first water I'm going to give this plant is actually going to be another systemic. And you've got the options here. I could use neem oil, which is a lot more natural, or a systemic chemical one, such as the rose clear that I used earlier. In this case, personally, I love neem oil. I think it's very good. But I find root mealybug in the past, when I've had it years ago, it's been very invasive, and I prefer to use a chemical one personally. In this case, neem oil is very good more for treating, very good for prevention, but in this case I don't want to take any risks. But it's entirely up to you. You don't even have to use anything as systemic. If you've removed all of the soil, that should be enough. And maybe just check the roots, maybe after 6 months, repot the plant again to check over the root system, to check how it's doing, just to check that they haven't come back, because these root mealybugs, it's unbelievable how they'll just appear sometimes out of thin air. The same with foliage the foliage mealybugs. And as I say, leave this for a week before I water. I'm going to use another systemic, especially for root pests, so the plant can take it up. And if there any more existing bugs happen to still be alive, and they chew on the roots, they will die when they chew onto the roots, because the roots will have the systemic insecticide already inside. And there you go, that's really it. And it really does depend on what type of cactus or succulent that you have and how bad the infestation is. As I say, if it was very bad, I would just recommend completely cutting the roots off and treating it as a cut-in, as I explained earlier. So there you go, guys. I hope you found this video helpful. And if I do ever get an infestation where it's very bad, when I happen to come across any root mealybug again, I'll make a video, actually cut it and treat it as a cutting. So hopefully I won't have to deal with that. But if I do, I like to share anything that I come across in my own experience with other people. So guys, thank you so much for watching. And if you want to know a little bit more on how to grow cacti and succulents and you're new to the hobby, do please check out my website, desertplantsofavalon.com, and hover your mouse over the growing tips bar. There'll be a drop down bar and lots of different sections on how to care for cacti and succulents. And I want to send you loads of love, heaps of happiness and tons of plant power from across the Emerald Isle. And until the next video, bye. Bye.